Hello, all Garland Nixon here, and it's Thursday afternoon. We're hanging out with the one and only Larry Johnson.
The sound of brother, thanks.
All right, we're hanging out with Larry Johnson from sonar21.com. Before we get going, let's ask Keir Starmer. So there, Keir Starmer, how's things going in the UK these days? sounds right about right. All right.
Yeah.
Got a few, you gotta have a little fun every now and then.
Yeah, that hopefully you're going to show that film clip of Putin, Modi, and Xi laughing. Have you seen some of the memes associated with that?
No, I'm sure they're good.
Yeah, so one of them has them laughing, and the subtext was Putin saying to Modi, "Hey, can you believe that Macron is married to a dude?" or another one was Putin has just finished telling him, "Yeah, my grandfather, who was a bus driver, died peacefully in his sleep. Sadly, I can't say the same for the other passengers."
Right? Yeah.
So very, very funny stuff.
They're having fun with that stuff, and I will say this: the way things are looking at, and you maybe before we go on, let me just ask you about one thing real quick. Macron apparently is going around saying something to the effect of, "We got to get the hospitals prepared." Have you heard that?
Yes.
We got to get the hospital prepared for war with Russia within the next couple of days. And I thought to myself, in the next couple of years, and I thought, their economy is going to crash.
Yeah.
And all hell's going to break loose when these people figure out what he and the elitist bastards have done to their society. And the hospital's going to be, because he thinks that place is going to fall apart. And, I'll say this, Larry, I've been saying this for a while. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But I feel like this. Maybe I'm wrong. When these poor bastards in Europe running around, they've been putting blue and yellow flags up all over the place, and we support Ukraine, all this other crap, right?
Right.
They're going to find out that they've been had so bad, and they're going to find out that their whole economy they're going into what happened in Russia in the 90s on steroids. It's like you've been committing the crimes, and the police are knocking at your door, and you have to pay now. You know what I mean? The bill's coming due, as they say.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I feel like this. I think there'll be violence. I think Macron and the Starmers and those people will have to get out of the damn country. They may string them up. There could be violence against these people in Europe when they figure out what the hell their leaders have done to them.
Right. Yeah. They could be leading the way. If you go to YouTube, just put up I don't know if this was because of the algorithm, but I have been seeing an enormous number of warnings about the economic collapse that's coming. Here's one about an economist named David Rosenberg. The housing metric is now worse. Housing is that it's going to be a collapse. Another guy, Adam Taggart, bubble trouble, stocks and housing. Now we're getting that on this side of the ocean. In France, they're in as you said, they're in far worse shape, and there's anticipation that the collapse may come as soon as Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, and the UK too. I've said this. Things will get bad here, but the U.S. can grow its own food. The U.S. can create its own energy. You know what I mean? The U.S. is big enough that the U.S. can survive these kinds of things. Ain't nobody going to be happy about it. People will be furious, but the U.S. can we got the things everywhere around that we need to actually pull out of something like this. The UK is a little old stinking island. They're finally figuring it out. And man, it's bad. I know people that have been over there recently, and they're like, man, I don't the crime, spray paint. Buddy of mine was in Europe last week, and he was like, everything's spray painted. There's graffiti all over the place. People are wandering around looking like a zombie apocalypse half the time. And he's like, they're saying it's going to get worse. UK, potholes in the street. Just the local governments don't even have money to take the trash away.
Yeah. No, it's and the disconnect is of when it comes to dealing with Russia and what their claim to support Ukraine. They're talking a big game. Boy, we're going to do this, and we're going to give this, and we're going to produce that. But when you step back and look at, there's no economy there to back up this tough talk. And, when you're going to make these kinds of promises or these kinds of threats, you got to have some economic depth. Germany is literally deindustrializing with each passing day. And France and the United Kingdom are in no better shape than Germany. In fact, Germany for a while was the one decent economy in Europe. The rest were just sort of limping along. Now they're all going on life support. So it is, this is, people looking for a military conclusion to the end of the war in Ukraine, but it very well could be ended because of the economic factors that hit the United States and Europe.
I suspect you're right. These governments are going to collapse. These governments are going to collapse. In Europe, it's a parliamentary system. They're just going to collapse. And as I said, it ain't going to be pretty here, but I think we are in a situation that's just better off than they are, even though it won't be good. There, I don't even think about it. Anyway, let's go to the important stuff. We're going to start off talking about it's some great stories. One of the things I always tell everyone is that you need to know what's going on. You need to be educated. You guys watch this, you watch Nima, you watch Judge Knapp, you watch all of these great shows, Danny Haiphong, you name it, right? You watch all of these shows, whichever show you like, Conversation Among the Ruins, The Duran, on and on and on, right? But you got to understand that the people on all of these shows, including me, have to go somewhere to keep up. We've got to read, we got to watch. And one of the sites that I recommend for people educating themselves is Sonar 21. It's Larry Johnson's website. He gives you up-to-date information, and he gives you his editorialism based on his background and his history and his knowledge of politics and international affairs. So let's get going. Let's start here. And I think this is important. Did Donald Trump authorize murder? And he starts off talking, about this alleged Venezuelan drug boat that was attacked. Larry, what do you have to say about that?
Man, and let me say that my observations and comments on this are based upon my experience in two areas. First, I started scripting counterterrorism military exercises for the Joint Special Operations Command and all the combatant commands below that. So like in SOCEUR, Special Operations Command Europe, or SOC South, Central Operations Command for Southern Command. So I understand that in each one of those exercises, we had to deal with the deployment of special operations forces, and in the execute order, there was always the rules of engagement. Under what circumstances would whether it's Navy SEALs or Delta Force or Army Rangers, under what circumstances, under what conditions could you use deadly force? Could you kill somebody? Could you blow something up? I never, in 23 years of doing that, ever saw a rule of engagement that said you can take an unarmed boat, a boat that's not fired on you, and blow it the hell out of the water. Never. So we're told, oh yeah, this was bringing drugs to the United States. Excuse me? That boat is going to traverse the Gulf of America or the Gulf of Mexico, take your pick, which, that's a lot of water and ocean to cover. No, that boat could drive out to the ocean for a bit, but it's not designed to travel I think that would take it about 36 hours minimum if it was actually going to Florida to drop off drugs. I mean, really? Um, and then we don't have evidence that anybody on that ship or on that boat, excuse me, was firing any kind of weapon at U.S. personnel or U.S. Ships. And yet, just for the hell of it, we blow it up. And then we say, oh, yeah, they're carrying drugs. How do we know? We blew it up, set it on fire, and it sunk. You didn't see any U.S. vessel come rushing in there. And what happened if you really thought that this was 11 Tren de Aragua guys and that they were bona fide terrorists? Why not arrest them? Why not capture them? Because it's quite easy with any Coast Guard boat would be bigger than that boat, and the Coast Guard has small ships. They could easily board that vessel, and that wasn't done. You take the people, you take them into custody, and you show off the drugs. Hey, look, we told you this was what they were doing. No, this was just an excuse to kill people, and it's downright, in my view, it's downright criminal. I mean, you remember when you were on the job, you couldn't, just because you thought somebody was doing something bad didn't mean you could pull out your service weapon and kill them. They had to pose an immediate threat to you or to somebody else, death or imminent body or imminent harm. And didn't, from what I can see, none of those conditions existed here.
Well, there are a couple of things, even if you think about it, like you said, from the perspective of if you're involved in a law enforcement operation, the most valuable person is a living person who's involved. Why? Because you can get information from them. If you felt that was a drug, number one, you go over there and stop the boat. You look at the boat now, you got evidence. You can try to find out who the boat's registered to, who bought it. Is there information on there? I remember one time there was a drug boat and that we went on and the people were gone from it. And they had all kind of information, pilot's license, where they had flown from. They had information from the bank accounts where they'd put boxes of put money and all of this stuff, right? This is all information. Yeah. So if you wanted to stop drugs, this is a valuable piece of evidence. Who only knows what you'll get? Then you have all these people, and you know how that works. You nab somebody with a boat full of drugs, and you say, "Hey, looks like you're going to get 100 years." Right. Hey, what? You release? Let me go. Drop it down. Work me out a deal. Put me in witness protection. I'll tell you everything. If in fact this was a drug boat and that you were doing drug interdiction, this would be the worst possible thing, destroying all the potential evidence and data and leads. Not only that, and let me go one further. I remember an incident where we got this man out of jail who'd been in jail for rape for 3 years. He didn't do it. We found out he didn't do it, right? What happens if it was, and there was some guy who, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's a drug boat. Some guy run a drug boat, but he had some people that he had hired and they thought it was a fishing boat. Yeah. And he's like, we're taking this frozen fish, and under the frozen fish, you know how they do it, frozen fish and this and that, and under the bottom is drug. They don't even know it. And he's got a bunch of people who are local fishermen or whatever that says we're taking shrimp and fish to this point, and you got one drug captain and the rest don't even know, or maybe all of them don't even know. Who knows? But to just say no trial, no investigation, no questioning of anybody, we'll just kill 11 people and then call it a drug. But you don't know if they did anything. They could have been shrimpers. Yeah. It's a pathetic excuse for foreign policy. I'll say that. And theoretically, if they're all Venezuelan citizens, which most likely are, it's an act of war against Venezuela to just go, what would the U.S. do if some boat was buzzing out of the Chesapeake Bay and a Venezuelan boat came along and shot and killed and blew up all 11 of them? We'd be at war with Venezuela.
Exactly right. Well, and that's the other part of my experience. When we set up Berg Associates in 1998, three of my partners were all former DEA. Bob Nieves was, he'd been chief of international operations at DEA. And John Moynihan set up and ran for 3 years, New York City, all the undercover money laundering operations. So, needless to say, from the start, we worked on a bunch of drug trafficking, money laundering cases, albeit in the civil world. But in some cases, we brought evidence that would have been used in criminal court. In fact, U.S. government in 2006 put out a publication on money laundering, and John Moynihan and I are the only non-U.S. government people mentioned in that report because we identified a type of a method of laundering money that the U.S. government hadn't even identified. It was called the cash letter agreement. So based upon that, I got some knowledge about the world of the cartels and drug smuggling. Well, number one, this put the stuff in a speedboat that's got 4 outboard mortars on it. They're going to run out of gas before they even get close to the United States. Okay, so how are they going to get refueled? Number one. Number two, that way of smuggling drugs into the United States, that went out in about 1983, 84, the days of Miami Vice. The cartels are not stupid. They are astute businessmen. And they find a number of very creative ways, like you pointed out, stuffing drugs inside of frozen fish, for example.
Drones, submarines, literally submarines. They have submarines. They got drones where they fly it up and there's open air. We got thousands of miles of border. They just find some area where there's nothing but cactus and blah, and they just drone goes up, flies it across, drops it up. It's easy for them to do.
Yeah. And in fact, the drone the drone technology has really been, I think, a game changer, not only for on the ground combat in Ukraine, but as a way to move drugs without having to worry about, you got a plane, with a plane, you got a tail number and got to have a pilot, and you're going to have an airfield. And hey, with the drone, particularly some of the ones that are capable of flying, a couple of 100 miles, you got, you've got a new way to move it. So with all that said, this notion that Nicolas Maduro is some big cartel leader is just, it's ridiculous. It's a lie. It's not true. But this is all being, I think, ginned up in order to justify a regime change or try to affect a regime change in Venezuela. I don't think it's going to work. We proved pretty piss poor at getting rid of Castro. We outlived him, but we couldn't get rid of him while he was alive, and his successor lives on. So I suspect Nicolas Maduro is just as likely going to continue to thrive. In fact, give more political support because of the U.S. attack on Venezuela. Nothing like it's that old story I told you, that when you try to get involved in between, a couple that are fighting and they're threatening to kill each other, and you try to get in the middle and break it up, they both turn on you and try to kill you.
Well, and I mean, the whole thing makes no sense. I'll add this. You and I are drug dealers, right? Oh, what do we do? Well, let's take a speedboat with 11 people on it. And, which probably, like I said, when you talk about a boating, your cruising range, this thing ain't got a cruising range of 50 miles, much less to be able to run 36, with those big outboards. But then what do you think, Larry? Well, there's a flotilla of U.S. military ships right off the coast. Hey, let's go right through them. We'll go right by them. Yeah. What could possibly go wrong? Come on. These people are so stupid. It's like, what's going on? I got an idea. We'll smuggle it down to the Coast Guard yard and ask them if we can borrow a Coast Guard boat to run our drugs out. You're going to go right through a flotilla of American ships, and we're supposed to believe that. Yeah. It's just unbelievable. Anyway.
Yeah, it's just, to underscore how much these cartels care about money. So my partner Moynihan, back when he was doing the undercover stuff in New York City, they took a load of drug money and then they bought a bunch of. They were supposed to it was a trade-based money laundering deal. So the way he set it up is the drug dealers thought that they were buying a bunch of cars, and those cars were then going to be shipped to them and put in containers and put on a container ship. Well, what Moynihan did is, he bought the cars, but ended up donating them to all the police departments, sheriff's offices in Florida. And then they worked up some dummy paperwork, waited for a hurricane. And once they saw a hurricane coming through the Caribbean, they put it on a ship that was created out of thin air, and but it notified the folks in Colombia, the Cali cartel guys, hey, it's coming on such and such ship, the parts port on such and such date. Well, then the ship gets out into sea and gets sunk in the hurricane.
Yeah.
The cartel guys in Colombia actually hired a recovery ship to go see if they could find the sunken ship and recover their cars, because they really thought those cars were sitting there down at the bottom of the ocean. I mean, so they didn't care about they'd got their drug shipment seized, but by God, man, that's our money, and we're going to get it.
People forget that when they went to what they were going to arrest Pablo Escobar, the U.S. put out a warrant for extradition, and he offered to pay the national debt for Colombia. He offered. He said, if you don't extradite me, I'll just pay the cash. Him and the Ochoa brothers, they had warehouses. They didn't know what to do with the money. They had so much money. It was, how do I get rid of it? So the idea that they're stupid and they're going to take some stupid, they buy $100,000 drone, put $10 million worth of drugs, fly it across, forget the drone.
Yeah.
When it lands, that's it. Don't send it back. They're not interested in it. What do they care? Those things are expendable.
Yeah. In fact, just like the NFL sends out scouts to see who the best players in college are and who they want to draft, the cartels also, they scout some of the best schools. And, particularly if it's a Colombian or Mexican that's attending a great school in the United States. And in particular, if they've got skills with computers or with, accounting, they'll get recruited and brought into the cartels, because they recognize they got to have some smart people. They can't just rely upon some muscles and some guys that are good at killing others. And so, this is a sophisticated business, and Donald Trump right now is treating it like it's a cartoon. And
you know what it is? He's treating us like a cartoon, because we're supposed to be so stupid that we believe some cockamamie story about a boat full of drugs. I don't even know if they blew up a boat. I don't even know if they even blew up a boat. I don't know if it's AI. I don't really know, because if I'm the Venezuelans, of course, you know what the Venezuelans are going to do? They're going to go along with it. Yeah, they sure did kill Venezuela. Why? Because if I'm the government of Venezuela, if you're a government, you want to say, we've been attacked by the U.S. We got to come together. We got to stick together. We got to circle the wagon. So in a way, it's very beneficial for the government of Venezuela, to say we're under attack.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's just, I think Trump is just mishandling it. Well, it's not just Trump, it's Rubio. And what I find so offensive is how, to plagiarize Pink Floyd, how comfortably numb the American public has become to this idea of the government just going out and killing anybody, anywhere, anytime with, hey, we assassinate Soleimani. Was he shooting at us? No. Was he planning to blow us up? No. He was involved with negotiations, possible peace negotiations with the United States. Hassan Nasrallah, blown up by the Israelis, but with our assistance and our help. Ahmed Alaki, the American cleric who was overseas. Again, we said, he's a radical terrorist. He'd said some unpleasant things. So we kill him. And so the American public is just like, yeah, that's okay. And so wait a second, what? I mean, as well as I do that if you individually were involved with that kind of routine killing of other people, not only would you be a mass murderer, but they would arrest your ass, and if you're in a state with the death penalty, you'd be on death row. And yet we allow this to go on with our government, that they can just kill whoever they want, whenever they want, without any consequence.
Yeah. Let's see. Pete Hegseth said that the U.S. will continue to hit drug cartels. Any traffickers operating as designated narco terrorists would face the same fate. No American personnel were harmed. Well, they weren't shooting at you. How could you possibly be harmed unless you slipped, on a banana peel or something, walking across the deck of the ship? Right. There were no U.S. casualties. Of course not. They weren't shooting at you. And the idea, the thing I say to Americans, be careful, because whatever they do overseas, they were like, yes, we're going after these terrorists overseas. They would take people to Guantanamo Bay and torture them. And then we found out that some of the people in Guantanamo Bay, they were in Afghanistan, and they would go into a village and say, hey, do you know anybody that's, a terrorist? And they'd say, you paying? Yeah, we'll give you $1,000. Here's 2 names. And they had people who were arrested and taken away, beaten and tortured just because somebody fingered them.
Yes.
To make money. So now we're simply saying, okay, we're designating these people terrorists. That's a terrorist. That's whatever the case may be. But what my point was this: what did the Biden administration do? They started going down this line of domestic terrorist. The direction they were going, they were ready to, guys like you and I who were saying we disagree with foreign policy. If Biden people had kept going, we'd be domestic terrorists, and our asses would be in Guantanamo Bay somewhere. What people don't realize is when you let the government overreach, wherever it is, at some point it comes home to catch up with you.
Well, and let me underscore, the story you told about that people in Afghanistan were giving up others, for just claiming others were terrorists, but just in order to collect money. One of my CIA classmates from my career trainee program, and a good friend, we vacationed together several times. Once in the Nile, once in Tanzania on a safari, once at Yellowstone. So, and he told me he was on the ground then, and he told me exactly. He said that's what was happening. He said that when he got there, realized that his predecessors had put the word out, hey, give us a terrorist, and we'll give you some money. And he said, people will be settling feuds. So, how does that apply to what's going on with Venezuela? You can, or in Colombia or in Mexico. Hey, if you're one cartel and you're trying to get rid of another cartel, man, how easy is it to actually rat them out? Identify where they are, and imply maybe that they're getting ready to carry out some sort of terrorist attack in order to let the United States kill them. That way, if you don't do it yourself, you don't run the risk of escalating a feud where they're going to come seek for revenge against you. Their anger will be turned against the United States. I mean, I wouldn't put it past some of these guys to play us that way.
Oh yeah, and you know what? I wouldn't put it past Rubio and Hegseth this to know it and not care. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To know, okay, well, hey, how much info do we have that these are drug dealers? Well, they might be, maybe not, I'm not sure. Okay, we'll go ahead and do it. And that's the story. You've seen this kind of stuff happen. That's the story we're going with.
Yeah,
they're a drug boat. Now, we all going with that. Didn't we see something when it came to Russiagate, where I think it was Clapper, one of these people, and or Brennan or whatever, it might have been Clapper, and the people that were supposed to write this Russiagate crap story came to him and said, hey, we don't really know. We haven't seen the evidence. We're not sure of this. And he said, oh no, we got to stick together on this.
Yeah.
We got to go. We got to, in other words, we don't care if it's true or not. If they did, now, the Trump administration, you'll condemn that in Russiagate when they're going after Trump, and I roundly condemned it. But what the hell are you doing? The government shouldn't do that. Now, you're going to go after some other people, and you're going to do, if it was wrong in Russiagate, which it was, for the government to cook up a story and go after a U.S. citizen, which Donald Trump, or anybody really, but for them to lie and cook up a story and go after somebody, it's wrong. But then now you're going to do the same thing against some guys and not just try to arrest them, you're going to kill them.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this is, instead of Americans being repulsed and revulsed by this, they're sort of celebrating it. Yeah, man, we showed them. This is gratuitous violence, because you got to step back and say, what are we killing them for? Oh, we want to stop the flow of narcotics. Oh, you want to do that? Well, let me give you a hint. One of the best ways to do it is to shut down the U.S. corporations and U.S. financial institutions that are handling the drug money, knowingly, wittingly so. And once they stop doing that, then the ability of these cartels to move their drugs and repatriate their earnings, that's going to bring an end to the business. But right now, shoot, there are so many U.S. companies and personnel and banks implicated in this trafficking business.
Which is the truth is, this is not about drug trafficking. The whole thing is a fraud that they're accusing Maduro. Isn't it interesting? All this cocaine comes in from Peru. All this cocaine comes in from Colombia. What are you doing? Oh, you going to Peru? Nah. Colombia? Not interested. Where are you going? Let's see. Which country has the most oil? Oh, yeah, that's right. Venezuela. Isn't it interesting? Yeah. We hate Venezuela. We're going after Venezuela. We're going after drugs. We're not going after the countries where they come from. Right. We're going to go after the countries where the oil comes from. It's so obvious that people have to be suckers to think that we sent a bunch of... let me add this. You're going after drug dealers and you're going to send nuclear subs?
Yeah, I know. Well, look how long it took to assemble these ships off the coast of Venezuela. If anybody had the assumption that the United States Navy was capable of responding quickly to a supposed threat, this I think this whole fiasco put an end to that, because they can see now that it took them more than a week and a half to actually get ships in the area. But you're correct. What are we going to do? Nuke Caracas? Please.
Exactly. It's unbelievable. And, it seems, part of it seems to me this, they want to go after Iran, but they know Iran's going to batter the bloody hell out of Israel with missiles again if they do it. And if the U.S. is involved, they're going to batter the crap out of our it could go real bad. They could end up battering our bases. And next thing you know, they're blowing up, oil infrastructure, and this thing could go bad. So it's almost like, well, if we can't go after the ones we want to fight with, to me, it's almost like a show of force. We got to show everybody. What are we going to do? Well, they can't. They're not really going to do anything in Venezuela. We'll go blow up a few boats for a while, and we'll shake our fist and tell. You know what I mean? Like, we got to show them how tough we are. So let's just go beat up the littlest guy in the bar.
Yeah. Hey, when you're a bully, that's one thing that makes you appreciate crippled kids in wheelchairs. Okay, because at least you hope that you've got a guaranteed easy mark that you can beat up. But that's where firearms can come in, because if you catch that kid in the wheelchair and he's armed and capable of defending himself, you could be having a bad day. And that's, in a way, it's sort of an apt metaphor for what happened to the United States in the Red Sea with the Houthis. We're going to go, those Houthis, look how they're poor, they're small, they're nothing. We're going to take care of them in a week, 2 weeks. Well, after 7 weeks, the United States had enough, couldn't hang in there with the Houthis. So the Houthis forced us out of the Red Sea. So, and I think the Venezuelans may have learned a lesson or two from that. Just, recognize that, you may suffer some casualties, but at some point you can create some real problems for the United States that they can't stand in and endure. The other thing that's going on here, though, is previously Venezuela didn't enjoy a lot of support throughout Central and South America, but I think now that they've become such a target of attack by Trump, that's starting to change as well. They're getting more support.
Well, the thing about it is, too, I mean, from the beginning, I thought this thing's kind of a fraud. People were like, they're going to invade Venezuela. I'm like, it's a country of 30 million people. Oh, right. By the way, they handed out AK-47s to like 4 million people. You know, they just like pretty much armed a significant portion of the population. Got millions of people with guns ready to start shooting if you come walking down the street.
Yeah.
And we sent 4,000 Marines to take Caracas, a city of 10 million or something. I find that hard to believe that you're going to take a city of 10 million before just the idea that there's 4,000 Marines. You might as well have 4 Marines as to have 4,000. So to me, the whole thing stinks of a show of force, a bullying tactic, and you just bullying around and acting like you're a badass. But 4,000 Marines does not a invasion of Venezuela make.
Yeah. Well, have you ever been to Venezuela?
Yes, I have, and traveled all around it.
All right. So you know what it's like. You get at the international airports out on the coast.
Yep.
And then you get in a car and you're driving up. You're basically driving up the mountains, and it's not a wide road, and there's one ambush position after another all along that road. I think if the U.S. was foolish enough to land troops and then have them try to move overland to Caracas, good Lord, there'd be a lot of body bags showing up in Delaware.
All of them.
Yeah.
Nobody come back alive. Because you know how it is. You're driving through there and it's mountains and roads going through the mountains. And then there's a little town here. And you're driving through the mountains and and the towns are all sitting on hills, over or flat with the road and going up the side of the hill. Everywhere you go, you're in a kill zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just riding around the whole country. Those roads, you're in a kill zone. Everywhere you go, people are shooting down at you on the roads. You're finished. You wouldn't make it, anyway. And people are armed all over the place. And then they're going to put positions, attack. What are you going to do? Yeah. No, it's that invading a land invasion of Venezuela is not an option. And what are you going to do? Stand off the coast, throw some missiles for a while until you get bored? It's a big country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
so I don't know what the hell they're doing, Larry, but whatever they're doing, it's really stupid.
Yeah. I fully and strongly endorse your point of view.
Now let's talk about China. You've got another interesting. Again, we're looking at a great website, which is Sonar 21, and we're looking at one of the lead articles, and the second part: why is he disrespecting China's role in defeating Japan? And it's kind of weird. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Because every time you turn around, Russia celebrates something and Trump's got to say, no, we're the ones that really want it. Yeah. China celebrates. I don't care. First of all, we didn't. But let's say, for the sake of argument for a minute, that we did help some country do something. For God's sake, let them have their day in the sun. Why do we, every time somebody says, we're celebrating our past where we did this in the year 1947, why does Trump have to say, we're the ones that really did it? I don't know why they're not giving us credit. I'm like, would you shut up, guy?
Yeah, I think Donald Trump's education with respect to World War II, his knowledge of it, is based upon watching Hollywood movies, Sands of Iwo Jima with John Wayne and The Longest Day with everybody and his brother, who was an actor back then. It was quite the ensemble cast. I'll admit a lot of what I wrote yesterday with respect, or that appeared in today's post, with reference to China and its role in World War II, is just recently acquired knowledge on my part, because I started asking this question. I had not realized until recently that during World War II and the war in the Pacific, the Chinese, much like the Soviets, the Chinese fought 70% of the Japanese army. In other words, we were only fighting a third of the Japanese. The way it was portrayed in the movies, my God, those Japanese, man, that's who they were fighting us, and we had the full force of Japan attacking us. No, we didn't. Or what Douglas MacArthur was fighting in the Pacific was 1/3 of the Japanese army, not the full strength of the Japanese army. Think about that, number one. Number two, when Trump, was this, petty, childish truth he put out there. He calls his posts on Truth Social truths. and with no sense of irony whatsoever. But with the truth he posted talked about the massive blood that the United States spilled in the Pacific. Excuse me? From December 7th, 1941 until what was it, August 15th, 1945, the United States lost a grand total of 110,000 Marines, soldiers, and Navy personnel. Now, that's more than we lost in Vietnam, but 110,000, that's not a lot relative to other conflicts compared like to what we lost in the Civil War in the United States. China, by contrast, lost 3.5 million. It's actually, the numbers ranges from 3 to 4 million. I take it right down the middle. 3.5 million soldiers who died fighting the bulk of the Japanese army in China for 7 years. It started in 1938 and continued until September 3rd it was September 3rd, 1945. So the fact that Trump is trying to pretend that we won that war, nonsense. It was China, were not for China pinning down the Japanese army, 70% of them for 7 years, that Japan would have been able to turn its full military force against us. And we may not have had as I want to call it easy a time, because the battle in Okinawa and the battles of Iwo Jima were quite bloody, and retaking the Philippines was also a big struggle. But imagine if we had to do that against an army that was 3 times the size of what we were fighting. Holy smokes! So that's so that this failure to understand history, it means what Trump what he said to the Chinese was insulting, because it implied that they really didn't do anything, and they certainly didn't make the sacrifices we did. Oh, I forgot to mention, 15 to 20 million civilians, in addition to the 3.5 million soldiers, were killed in that war. So when you put the Soviet Union and China from World War II together, those 2 countries alone accounted for about 68% of all fatalities during World War II. Their people were the ones who died, they spent the most time dying. So it's appropriate, really, that those 2 countries should be front and center in celebrating the end of that horrific war 80 years ago.
And the other thing that you see here is that these countries are coming together, like a significant portion of it. Some of these countries, you got Russia and China, which, if you're honest, I mean, they've had their bumps in the road between the two of them over the course of time. You've got India, who, God knows they've had their issues with the Chinese, right?
Right.
And now all of them look at the U.S. in horror and say, man, we better huddle together like a bunch of puppies to stay warm. They all get together and they say, what's the old saying, we better hang together or we'll surely hang one at a time.
Yeah, if we don't hang together, we shall surely hang separately.
Exactly. So and not that it's a bad, I ain't saying that it's a bad thing that they've driven together, but the U.S. in its maniacal quest to divvy these countries up so we can take them all out, ironically, paradoxically, have driven them all together. And now this is a lot of economic power, number one. And this is a gigantic economic market to sell to each other. They're going to get wealthy. Yeah. They're already getting wealthy, might I add. As we get poorer, so it seems to me, who the hell can afford to buy anything these days?
Well, and that, when we try to total up and look at the, who's capable of winning a war, it goes beyond the military. But just first, let's focus on the military. I don't know if you had a chance to watch any of the parade in Tiananmen Square from yesterday. I mean, incredible. It's not just that there were tens of thousands of soldiers, both male and female, of different, branches of their service. But when they marched with a precision that was, sort of reminds me of like how Grambling State would have a show at halftime, with the Grambling State Marching Band. I mean, these people were styling like that. I mean, it was incredible to watch. Then you compare that to the slovenly shuffling appearance of U.S. soldiers at the July 4th parade. My God, I've seen Cub Scout groups march better than that. And so people say, well, why is that important? You can tell a lot about somebody by, do they take care of something? If they're given a task, do they do all within their power to get it right, to make it perfect if they can, or do they just sort of slap it together and have a half-assed approach? And what we saw from both the Chinese planning and the Russian planning that went into Russia's May 9th event, it was equally impressive, but smaller in scale, if you can believe it, compared to what the Chinese put on. But both of them, dwarfed the United States. The United States just, looks like a second, third rate sports organization. And so that's the military side of the house. But then on the economic side of the house, what are we seeing? The United States has this enormous debt problem, 125% on the debt to GDP ratio. But then on top of it, our inflation is actually increasing now, and it's increasingly faster than the Trump administration is reporting. They're actually hiding critical information. The economic growth rate in this country is stagnant, whereas Russia's economic growth rate has slowed dramatically this year, down to about 1.5%. But that was a direct consequence of deliberate policy by the Russian government to slow inflation. Inflation had gotten quite high, up around 20%. And they said, nope, we're going to put the brakes on and bring it down. Now they've started easing the credit controls, opening credit up. But even though they're stopping inflation, there are still, if you look at the wage growth in Russia compared to last year to this year, Russians on average are making like 20,000 more rubles a year this year compared to last year. So, all right, you got inflation, but we're also making more money. Not such a bad situation. When you get to the other BRICS countries, China, India in particular, and Brazil, all have positive growth rate. All do not have this negative debt, where the debt outweighs their gross domestic product. Compared to NATO, where that applies to the UK, to France, they're both, the UK is like 101% debt to GDP. France is like 110%. Even Germany, which used to be the strongest economy in Europe, is deindustrializing. It's gone from 50% debt to GDP ratio to almost 80% in just 3 years. So they're going in the wrong direction. They've deindustrialized. So it's this complete economic imbalance with the economy favoring Russia, China, India, because those three produce a lot of products that the West needs. Do you know that last year, 3.4% of Russia's exports went to the United States? So it's just, we talk, we're going to sanction, we're going to punish those Russians. Hey, send us some more of that rich uranium we can't make.
Another interesting down the line of economics, Larry's got another great article, and it is on sonar21.com. You can go there to check it out. Why Donald Trump's tariff war is not working. When the history of the Donald Trump president is written, his ill-advised scheme to tariff the world will be seen as one of the most self-destructive acts by a president in the history of the United States. It's a tax, and we're paying for the tax.
Yeah, it was. Number one, you think, okay, if you and I, we're trading, but I'm constantly, I always owe you money, no matter, I've always coming out on the short end. So the way to do that is I put a tax on you so that I get money from you in addition to what I would have to pay you. Well, that works if you can compel me, or I unless I have some unique leverage over you, there's no way I could really compel you. You can say, well, I'm going to go somewhere else then. I'm not going to continue to deal with you. So in this case, Brazil was buying more stuff from us than we were buying from Brazil. That means we had a trade surplus with Brazil, and so then what does Trump do? Turns around and says, I'm going to throw tariffs on Brazil because of their domestic political situation. The Brazilians didn't miss a beat. One of the sanctions that was put on was coffee beans. Now, you already have a global shortage of coffee because of a bad coffee harvest this year. So the Brazil immediately turns to China and goes, hey, would you like to buy some coffee? And China, who, the reputation of tea is becoming the largest coffee market now in the world. And they said, sure, we'll enter into a long-term agreement with you. So now all those coffee beans that used to come from Brazil to the United States, they're not coming here anymore. Why? The tariffs diverted it. The same with propane, liquid natural gas, propane. The United States used to send a lot of that to China. China said, nope, we're cutting it off. We're not taking any more from you. So the tariff gambit to get other countries to pay us money for the privilege of them sending us their products, it's not working. The money is not flowing into the treasury. And there is genuine alarm, as I mentioned, if you go check out on YouTube, about different people predicting a financial crisis soon, not later, but soon.
Well, I've been seeing a lot of stuff on online lately about farmers that are screwed, soybeans especially, some dairy, some of the other farm products, because several countries that buy a lot of U.S. agriculture have just said, well, we'll go elsewhere. They get basically, it's a way to retaliate against tariffs. And farmers, man, they're what makes everything happen. Prices are collapsing. Now, what happens? If nobody overseas are buying this soybeans or whatever corn, the market is now flooded with it, and the price drops out, and the farmer can't make enough to cover the loans and the money he had to take out just to get through the season. It's a disaster.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I mean, China was one of those that just said, all right, we're not buying any more of your soybeans. And the bottom of the market just fell out. So, and you correctly note those farmers who invested in growing that crop, what are they going to do? They got loans due at the banks. Now, depending on how large some of these loans are, and how concentrated some of these loans are, it could potentially trigger a financial crisis in this country. We'll see.
Yeah, here's right here. Let me just show you everybody this one. I mean, anybody can search for themselves, but everywhere you look, you'll see things like this. Rural America is suffering as an economic crisis as crop prices plunge. U.S. soybean farmers cannot survive. Now, like this, cannot survive a prolonged trade dispute. You know what's going to end up happening? They're going to have to bail them out.
Yeah.
And it's not just soybeans, it's corn, it's all of these things where you can't just piss off all your customers. You
Right.
can't own a store and everybody that comes in the store, you piss them off. After all, nobody's coming in your store. They'll go up the street and buy from someone else. And
Yeah.
that's what we're up to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what makes, particularly on the corn front, so much worse this year. This reportedly is like the largest harvest of corn in history, in the history of recorded history in the United States. Now, so you got this huge supply, and again, the basic laws of supply and demand. Big supply, price is going to go down normally. And then if you got countries that say, hey, even at your lower price, we're not going to buy from you because your tariffs are making it more expensive for us to do business, so we're just not going to buy. Perfect. This is like that perfect storm. The indicators, some of the indicators about the potential for a financial crisis comparable to what happened in 1929 is very, very real. Those those flashing warning signs are going off.
Well, and of Europe, the European bloc is one of our biggest customers.
Mm-hmm.
If they crash first, not only do we have all the problems here, and now all the stuff we were sending up there, they're broke. They ain't buying it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just, now the other thing you've got here is you've got some data based on the most recent available data, the top 10 countries exporting to the United States. And you've got Mexico, China, who we're pissing off.
Yeah.
Vietnam, who we've hit with huge tariffs. India, 85 billion.
And let's put India in context. So, they're in the news right now. That's the one we're trying to bully. Notice we're not going after China on their oil that they're buying from. They're buying far more oil from Russia, but we're going after India. Well, India is $85 billion in exports to the United States. India's is a $4 trillion gross domestic product. So in other words, that's just that 85 billion is 2.7%, 2.5% of their GDP. It's nothing. They could lose that much with a drought or something. So the United States is pretending that we got enormous leverage over them, and instead, what has happened is the Indians who used to be favorably disposed towards the United States, even they're pissed off at us because they're fed up with the United States being a bully and thinking that we can go order them around like they're some house servant.
Yeah, well, these are countries. I mean, here's the other part about it. These are countries that have a history. They've been around for 1,000 years or thousands of years. They got history, they got culture, and they have some level of pride in their country.
Right.
And, the leader of a country, you just can't let people smack you around because you won't be in charge anymore. Because what's going to happen, the people around you are going to say, see, that guy's weak.
Yeah.
Look at that. The other countries, our country's being humiliated, embarrassed. If you are a leader of a country and you start kowtowing to other countries, you're going to be out of power quickly because you got to maintain that. You got to look like a leader and you got to look strong. And if you don't look like a leader and you look strong and you kowtow to these other countries, you're going to be toast. There's no way Modi can do it, even if he wanted to.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. But I guess what really got under Modi's skin was Trump, needling him to, hey, nominate me for the Nobel Peace Prize and give me credit for bringing an end to this war. And then Modi's like, what? You didn't have anything to do with this. Plus, India recognizes that the United States for a long, long time has had preferential treatment of Pakistan over India.
Yes.
It goes back, good Lord, 65 years or more when the CIA was using Pakistan as an air base for the U-2 spy plane that would fly over Russia, and then using Pakistan as a resupply base for the Mujahideen fighting the Soviets in the 80s, then using Pakistan as a supply base for our own effort as we go into Afghanistan after 2001 and get bogged down for 20 years. So all along that time, we played a much closer, we put a lot more emphasis on Pakistan than on India. And that hasn't changed.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. Let me see if I can figure this. There we go. I just want to remind everyone about Larry's great website. It's sonar21.com. As you can see, there's a lot of great articles. There's a lot of stuff on there. Number one, make sure you subscribe. There you go. Put your email address in and subscribe. And the opportunity is there to support the Sonar 21 effort. Continues solely through the generous support of our audience. That means you. So you can use PayPal, PayShoot, Patreon, or of course, buy him a coffee. So thank you very much. Check out Sonar 21. Keep up with all of Larry's good work. And if there's any way you can afford to, make sure you support him. Larry, thanks a lot, and certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us here.
Hey, well, thank you. Man, that hour blitzed by. Jesus.
But that's because we're having fun. Time flies when you're having fun. Thanks
Absolutely.
a lot. All right, talk
friends.
to you soon. All right, everybody. The most important thing you can do is, of course, share this on all your social media platforms. If you can. What did I do with my banner? For God's sake. There you go. You can see everything. You can follow me on Rockfin, on Telegram, on Patreon, and all that stuff. Thanks very much for my Patreon people and my Buy Me a Coffee people, the ones that do it singularly or the ones that actually sign up for monthly. You can do PayPal, Cash App, and all that kind of stuff. Hey, follow me at Substack. And of course, I got a P.O. box. So if you want to email something to the P.O., if you want to snail mail something to the P.O. box, whatever it may be, people send me books, you name it, articles, clothes. Literally, somebody sent me a bunch of really nice shirts and clothes. How awesome is that? And of course, some people send donations, whatever you want. My P.O. box is there. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day. Share this on all your social media platforms.